Okay, that was it for the Mario parties. Now we have Pokemon Stadium. Here is the first one. So this would be Pocket Monsters Stadium 2 in Japan. Again, we never got Pocket Monsters Stadium 1, so this is our official first game in terms of what the US received, in the PAL region for that matter. I never filled in my name there. This game is pretty good though. It's mainly a marketing game. Pretty much both Pokemon Stadium games are, because they have really cool tournaments, and you do get prizes for like fully completing through the rounds. There's a round 1 and a round 2. I've never beaten round 2 on either this game or the second Pokemon Stadium game, because they do get really, really challenging, especially if you're only using rental Pokemon. For this game, the rentals were a little bit more generous because the stats weren't nerfed down. So if you had Pokemon that you didn't raise on your own that had good move pools, you had to rely on using rentals. This game, like I said, the stats of the Pokemon were fine, but sometimes the rentals wouldn't always have the moves that you liked. For example, the Dratini would get like Fire Blast and Thunderbolt, while the Dragonair and Dragonite would only get like crap moves such as Ember and stuff like that. Well, maybe not Ember, but moves that were generally weaker just because they were evolved and more stronger than the pre-evolved form. You would see that in cases, especially with tournaments like the Prime Cup and stuff, where high-level Pokemon were definitely needed to complete the tournaments. But yeah, like I said, fun overall, just the rentals weren't really that generous. Speaking of rentals, we do have the sequel here, Pokemon Stadium 2. This was called Pocket Monster Stadium Gold and Silver Edition in Japan. This one has very, very shitty rental Pokemon. And I have proven this too, because I've played through round 1 of the game on my YouTube channel. It's the rentals only run. If you look under my playlist, it should be found pretty easily on like my main channel's homepage. Should be able to find it. It's one of the more recognizable Let's Plays on my channel, I think, because there's a lot of videos I had in this series when I did make it. But yeah, the rental Pokemon were absolutely terrible. The stats had very terrible IVs. I even looked it up. A lot of Pokemon that I used from the rental team pretty much had the worst IVs that a Pokemon could possibly get through random number generator. It was so unfair. And the move pools were terrible as well. It's again like the case with Pokemon Stadium 1, where the fully evolved Pokemon would get the crap moves while the pre-evolved forms would get the better moves. So, for example, like Jinx would get Icy Wind while Smoochum got Ice Beam or Blizzard or whatever the case was. So yeah, just really unfair balance, and it sounds like it would be a challenge, but the thing is, it's too difficult to try to possibly get through the game with very low level Pokemon in terms of stat distributions and having crap moves. So it just was not a fair distribution of giving people rental Pokemon who didn't have their own Game Boy games to raise their own Pokemon. And if you play this game, honestly, after doing my rental run of this game, please raise your own Pokemon. Trust me, it'll save you a lot of heartache and hassle in the future if you ever play this game for whatever reason. And that reminds me, since I was just talking about these games, the Pokemon Stadium games, let me pull an accessory here on the side. Here is the transfer pack. This is the device that you would connect to your Nintendo 64 controller that will let you import your Pokemon into the Stadium games. It would also let you trade, change your items as far as how they were handled in the PCs, and it would also let you play your Pokemon games on the TV screen, which was definitely a pretty cool feature back in the day, in color too, I might add. The one that's in here now, kind of interesting that I'm showing this particular game, but this is Pocket Monsters green version I have inside the transfer pack now. So, little preview as far as what's coming up in future collection videos. But yeah, this is Pokemon green version, which was only released in Japan. It's identical to Pokemon blue version here in the US. The Pocket Monsters blue version was unique to Japan, though. That was the one that had different sprites and different Pokemon locations and things like that. That it was pretty much a unique game to Japan as far as their version of Pocket Monsters blue. But yeah, like I said, Pocket Monsters green got transferred to the US as Pokemon blue version. And on here, since this came out a year before the US got its release, the sprites of the Pokemon are so freaking hilarious. I'll have to show a video of that sometime. Yeah, that was just a little distraction I had off to the side there. But that was the device used for the Pokemon Stadium games to get your own Pokemon onto the Nintendo 64. And here we have at the bottom of the stack Pokemon Snap. Absolutely fun game. And I'm going to go ahead and give another quick shout out here. If you've ever watched Dark Minded Sith, in my opinion, he has one of the best Let's Plays of Pokemon Snap. So freaking funny, and I love his commentary. And he got really lucky with a lot of the bonus scores that he was getting for the special captures that you got with the camera since you played as Todd on that game. Because on Pokemon Snap, that's what you did. You took pictures of Pokemon that you've seen at different locations on the island that Professor Oak had sent you to. Again, it's another quotable game with Professor Oak being like, "You were close and wonderful. It's the sky." So yeah, this is that legendary game that brought all that about. It's definitely really fun, and I really wish they would make a sequel. I've heard the same thing from other people too. Since the Wii U's out, it has really good technology to make another Pokemon Snap game that you could use the Wii U gamepad to like take pictures of Pokemon. I think it would work, and I really hope that they are thinking about doing something like that soon, because that'd be awesome. I'm gonna go ahead and just state that, because this game was so much fun. So again, that is another stack out of the way. Alrighty, we have one last stack yet to go through, and there's a couple things on the side that I'll be pulling out as well. First one here is Yoshi's Story. Definitely a really good game. I'm not going to say it's quite as good as what Yoshi's Island was for the Super Nintendo, but it was still a lot of fun. And this is the game that I see a lot of people say is like the baby game of the Nintendo 64 because of the fact that the Yoshis are babies on the game, and it has like happy sappy dappy music and just kind of like a kid's storybook theme to it as far as like the colors of the stages and stuff, and the fact that there's hearts and flowers, things like that. Which I could see why people say that, but at the same time, if you do things like the All Melons Challenge Run, which I did, I might add, where all you did was collect all 30 melons in the stages, the game got pretty difficult. So it has a fair amount of challenge, but it's self-imposed, so you have to kind of set the challenges yourself, as far as like doing things like an All Melons Challenge Run, or whatever the case might be, if you're like collecting all coins, collecting all the hearts, because stuff was really well hidden. And you had to learn the mechanics of the game to be able to perfect everything well. Because even like with the melons, if you do the melon minigames where you had to catch them and carry them to the goal line, that got really difficult. So even though people argue that it's a quote-unquote kids baby game, there's definitely some challenge to it. So I'm going to kind of say that I disclaim that claim, if that makes any sense. I'm going to disprove it. That's what I'm trying to say. See, anyone who says it's a baby game, please reconsider that there is challenging obstacles and things like that that you can still do in the game that make it hard. It's still fun overall, though. And here's our next one. We have Gex64 Enter the Gecko. People complain about the camera on Super Mario 64 not being that great. Once you get to this game, cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo. Oh my god, this was a terrible one. I don't know how anyone possibly tolerated it. It's not that great. It's just a third-party platformer. With its adventure style similar to Super Mario 64 where you collected remotes. But it had like a lot of graphical bugs and things that just did not respond correctly. But for some reason I played it a lot as a kid. I don't know why. I don't recommend it though. And it had like really cheesy humor in it too, this game did. As far as like quoting movies and just random references. A lot of Star Wars and space theme quotes too, I noticed. But anyway, the next game is Ms. Pac-Man Maze Madness. I haven't fully completed it, but it's pretty neat from what I've tried of it. You basically go through 3D style mazes and collecting fruit and pellets as Ms. Pac-Man. Definitely fun. I recommend it. If you can find it. I think it's still pretty cheap nowadays. I don't think it's a rare game yet. But it's one I'd recommend. And here's Namco Museum 64. This is just a collection of 6 arcade games. This is definitely not one I would recommend because it's just inferior compared to what you can get to today for a lot of the systems. Like even the 360. All 6 of these will be on the 360 version of Namco Museum. So don't waste your time on an N64 one. And I remember this one required the controller pack to save your high scores, which was really retarded. Well, it just seems to be one thing after another here throughout the day. First my battery dies, and now my card got full. No matter though, I actually switched to a larger size memory card, so hopefully that won't happen again. And it is completely clean, so we have some time to work with. But I'm going to try to be haste here. I left off at quite a cliffhanger. I'm not sure if I'm going to split the video here or not. Depends on what everything looks like when I go to review it. But if this is the cliffhanger, then I left you guys off at a very important game. My childhood right here. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. The limited edition gold. And speaking of later, as far as recording, it's nighttime right now, so I had to turn on my room light, and it looks, I think, worse than what the first day was that I recorded this, so hopefully you can see this okay. But again, this is something I have to work with, because I don't really have much time at the moment to be able to wait till the next week to record more, so I hope you guys don't mind the lighting. We're close to the end, though, so there's not much left to go for Nintendo 64. But yeah, here's the limited edition of Ocarina of Time, the gold version. I actually have two of these. Two of the gold, that is. The other one I just got recently, which I'll be showing here in just a second, once I get through the last few remaining cartridges here. But yeah, this is pretty much my childhood. This is version 1.0, so it has all the original famous things, I don't know how else to really word it, that's known for the earliest versions of Ocarina of Time. The PAL version never got version 1.0. PAL version only got version 1.2. So the only way they would have experienced it is from watching videos of other people playing the version 1.0 of the game, or just by importing it. But I don't know how that works with the PAL Nintendo 64, if they can play it or not. But anyway, yeah, this has all the original text errors. It has the Red Blood Ganondorf, the Fire Temple original song with the chanting on it, and just all those things. And just like the different oddities, like certain glitches and stuff that are exclusive to the original version of the game. But yeah, nonetheless, this is my gold version. And I pretty much was lucky to even have this, because Swordless Link is possible on this version of the game, which I admire to this day for whatever reason. And here is a gray version of Ocarina of Time. This is version 1.2, so it has all the edits and changes to it. If for whatever reason I wanted to see all that, I would just play this version of the game. But hey, I'm a big fan of this game. It's my absolute favorite Zelda game of all time, so I'm happy to have multiple versions of it, because I'm that obsessed with Zelda, if you couldn't tell. And last but not least, at the very bottom, we have Majora's Mask, which has a very 3D looking cover on the front of the cartridge. I forget what these are called, just those like 3D panels, that flip panels or whatever, that's, as you move it, it kind of has a 3D effect to it. It looks kind of cool on camera, much better than in person, I'll put it that way, because it's like all blurry. Although on camera it might be blurring too, depending on what angle I hold it at. But yeah, Majora's Mask is pretty awesome. I talked a little bit about it briefly when I showed my Japanese version of it. I have a lot of fond memories of Majora's Mask in general, because one of my friends growing up actually really loved this game to death, and unfortunately they passed away. But this is a game that I have deep memories of my friend, because him and I actually did play this game together, and I know that it was one of his favorites. So this game just has some deep personal meaning to me as well. And speaking of Majora's Mask, the fetch quest side questing game, which may or may not appeal to everyone, and plus it really was a black sheep for a long time, because it didn't really get popular, I think, until the creepypasta with the Ben Drown story. Because I just remember everyone saying that, oh, it was so far-fetched and weird. I did not like that game at all. No, this game was something I always liked from the get-go. I never let public opinion, affect my perception on what I thought of each individual Zelda game. And even at the time when this came out, like, I would have been turning 10 years old, I think. So when this game came out, I really wouldn't have been aware of such opinions, because even the internet was still young back at that time when the game first launched. So yeah, I always liked it, even way before public opinion swayed to shift into it, and before Project Moonfall for the 3DS remake to come out and all that stuff. But I always liked Majora's Mask. And speaking of which, I also have another version of that game as well, and that would be the not for resale store demo version. And unlike the Super Mario 64, this one does not have a chain on it. Woohoo! I can spin the cartridge everywhere. I actually should show the backside, because unlike the Mario one, this one has the store label sticker on the back, like for the store name and store number, which never got filled in for whatever reason, but it has that special label on the back of it. But yeah, this is the not for resale version, which is indicated on the front of the cartridge. And as you can notice, when I spin this, it has just a regular sticker on it, which I think is really interesting. And you can see the picture a whole lot better. It's really cool looking, actually. But yeah, I have this. This, again, was just a cheap find that I found. And this is a collector's item. However, this is not as rare as you think it would be. It's still rare in the sense that it's a not-for-resale version of the game. But there's yet another not-for-resale version of Majora's Mask that exists that's gray cartridge instead of gold. I have the gold version, which you can tell if I shift the cartridge around in the camera a lot. But yeah, there's a gray version that exists. And it is actually worth hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars if you have the gray version of the not-for-resale version. I kid you not. If you ever are curious about that, look it up sometime. Like, just do a Google search and you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll probably come up to, like, a special blog I think that certain speedrunners have made, if I'm not mistaken. Because there's a speedrunner who's, like, a collector of the store demo version. It's called Swordless Link, I believe, who has a pretty big fascination with this stuff. But yeah, the gray version is worth a lot of money just because of how rare it is. And it has apparently exclusive things to it that aren't found in any other versions of the game whatsoever. Because the regular version of Majora's Mask was always gold. There was never a gray version of it released. So, again, if you have the gray version of this game, consider yourself very fortunate because you have a very valuable game. And I'm talking even more valuable than Earthbound valuable. But that would be it for all of my loose carts. Real quick, I didn't show this earlier, but I have the box for Ms. Pac-Man Maze Madness. It also has the instructions inside. I'm not really going to open it. But here's something that I did like about the N64 boxes. Was that if you looked at each individual side, they were very decorative looking. Like, they were different colors. Like, it's green on one side, yellow on another, blue on another. And on this side, it's red. So they're decorative if you ever put these on a shelf. The only thing that sucks about the boxes to these games is that they're cardboard. So they're really crappy in quality in terms of the actual box that held the cartridges. And they can deteriorate over time because they're just really not well built. So yeah, this stuff disintegrates. That's what makes N64 boxes hard to collect nowadays. So yeah, you're lucky if you ever get a box for any N64 game, honestly. And I have one other game here. The cart is inside. The sticker on the front looks identical to the box art itself. But I do have Castlevania 64. Well, that's what it's come to be known as, because there's another Castlevania game for the Nintendo 64 as well. I don't remember exactly what it's called. It's Castlevania, it's not a series I'm entirely familiar with, but I just happen to have Castlevania 64 with the box and manual still all included with it. So just throwing that out there. And last but not least, here's my final game of the collection that's unique. This is Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, which I'll go ahead and open because this is just a simple universal game case that opens up. But yeah, here's Episode 1 Racer. I played a little bit of this with a friend before, and from what I remember, it kind of reminds you of F-Zero almost, because it is pretty fast-paced. And if anyone's ever played any of the F-Zero games, you really fly fast. And since these are pod racers, it's kind of the same mechanic in terms of how these racing games work. This is really fun to play. I recently got it from a contest that I got from a Twitch stream that I donated. It was part of the Wounded Warrior project that they were contributing to. I got this, and then I also got Super Mario 64 with the Universal Game Case, and I also got Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, which is also gold. I'll go ahead and open it up quick. So I have 2 copies of the gold cartridge of Zelda and 1 gray. And a Japanese version. So yeah, I have a lot of Ocarina of Time going on, if you couldn't tell. There's definitely a lot that I own. But yeah, these 3 are in universal game cases, which is something that I'm going to probably be doing with the rest of my N64 games here soon. I did just get a pretty big amount of them recently, so not enough to complete the whole collection. I still need about like 25 or 30 more roughly. But I did get a collection of just blank universal game cases that I'm going to use for the rest of my collection and eventually get through someday. But with all that said, that is everything I own. This took forever because I was not expecting it. There's a lot of N64 games in my collection, so there was just a lot to go through. Kind of took me quite by surprise. I'll have to keep that in mind for when I do future collections of different consoles, because there's still some consoles I have at least 20 or 30 games, if not more, for. And GameCube I have even more than that. So yeah, there's a lot to go through. But that would be it for the N64 collection, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope this was a pretty pleasant trip down memory lane for anyone who might have owned these games or had some kind of memory or emotional attachment to them, whatever the case might be. But it's all in good fun. It's part of the childhood for me, and I just wanted to share that with you guys. Till next time, I will have a different console. I might move on to handhelds next or something else. I'm not sure. Might even get into Sony stuff next. Whatever it might be, I will see you guys next time. Peace out.